Hey, this Brother Peter tells us, why did Jesus come to this earth in the flesh? He came to this earth in the flesh that ought to save the people that would ask him to save them. He brings us to a realization at one point in our life or another. And if we pass by that, we could shut the door. I believe if I had shut the door November 5th, 1972, God never ever would have ever spoke to me again. I had had 3 strikes and you were out. I was on my 3rd strike and I would have been completely out. God had spoke to me through my life and I had cursed him. For the last time he said, this is it for you. It's 3 o'clock in the morning and you just have been taking my name in vain and doing everything opposite of what you were taught throughout your life. And I have been wooing you and you wouldn't come. So I asked him that morning. I believe right now I would have been sealed to damnation, probably even be still alive today and be in torments in some prison somewhere, in a hellish situation, and not be able to get out and not be able to get God on my side. Because I rejected him for the last time he was going to speak to me. You say there's a last time? I believe there's a last time God's going to speak to some people. And I was one of them. And he said this. So we see that we are supposed to be, let's look at chapter 1 in the outline of Luke. And chapter 1 through chapter 4 and 3 tells us first the author and date, the background and the setting, the historical theology of Jesus, and the how the imperative challenges you and I to come to him. And it talks about Calvary and at Golgotha. And so he has there the picture of Jesus dying on the cross to give us. And then 1 through 4 is the preamble. Let's read that. As with other 3 Gospels, a little title is derived from the author's name, according to tradition. Luke was a Gentile. The Apostle Paul seemed to confirm this, distinguishing Luke from those who were of the circumcision. That would make Luke the only Gentile, a pen and book of Scripture. He is responsible for a significant portion of the New Testament, having written both this Gospel and the book of Acts. See author and date. Very little is known about Luke. He almost never included in the personal details about himself, and nothing definite is known about his background or his conversion. Both Eusebius, Espesus, and Jerome identify him as a native of Antioch, which may explain why so much of the book of Acts enters in on Antioch. That was one of the little cities that they went to. They were actually spurned at Antioch. They actually left running, having rocks and bricks thrown at them, and wiped their feet clean of it. And I don't know if they ever visited back there again. And then we see the birth of Jesus is talked about here in Luke. And we see that the announcement to Zechariah about his wife going to have John the Baptist. Zechariah was married to Elizabeth, who was Mary's sister, and she had John the Baptist. And we see the visitation now of the angel in 1 and verse 39. And let's go there in Mark. Let me get over there in Luke, excuse me. Matthew, Mark, Luke. That would be Matthew, Mark, Luke. That would be the third in the New Testament. Luke would be the third in the New Testament. And it has many, many verses, chapters in it. And let's get back into Luke chapter 1. For as much as many have taken in hand to set forth in order the declaration of those things which are most surely believed among us. Now he's saying, the things that I'm fixing to write here need to be believed. Surely believe them. They are true. And let's take a look right here where God tells Zacharias. And Zacharias said unto the angel, Whereby shall I know this? For I am an old man, and my wife is well stricken in years. The angel answered and said unto him, I am Gabriel. By the way, anytime the angel of the Lord, Gabriel, came on the scene, he was a messenger of good. He was a messenger of good tidings. And the angel answered and said, I am Gabriel, that standeth in the presence of God, and am sent to speak unto thee, and show thee glad tidings. Wow, how would you like to be 100 years old right at it? And God says, hey, you're going to have a child. And behold, thou shalt be dumb, and not be able to speak until the day that these things shall be performed, because thou believest not my words, which shall be fulfilled in their season, which would be 9 months. So here's a man lost his ability to speak for roughly 9 months. And the people waited for Zacharias and marveled that he tarried a long time in the temple. And when he came out, he could not speak unto them. And they perceived that he had seen a vision in the temple. For he beckoned unto them and remained speechless. And it came to pass that as soon as the days of his ministration were accomplished, he departed to his own house. And after this days, his wife Elizabeth conceived and hid herself 5 months. She was old too. And she started showing, and she hid herself. She didn't want nobody to see. Thus hath the Lord dealt with me in the days wherein he looked on me to take away my reproach among men. It was a reproach for a woman to not have a child in those days. Here she is, an old woman, and she's fixing to have John the Baptist. This was all in the scheme of God. I'm not using the word scheme as something bad, but he had a scheme of the whole thing from beginning to end. Elizabeth was chosen. Mary was chosen. And by the way, Elizabeth and Mary were cousins, first cousins, or they were related together, close relation together. And this shows the sovereignty of God, that he already beforehand knew. He also knew that in Bethlehem, in Judea, that's where this was all going to take place, where Mary and Martha, where the Lord's Prayer took place. You remember when Jesus was, 10 years old? He was at the temple, and he gave the Lord's Prayer, and the importance of the importunity in 11:5-13. The impossibility of naturally doing what Mary did, was have a child without knowing a man, and Elizabeth did in her old age knowing a man, who upon the Pharisees and the lawyers Jesus pronounced many things. And the lessons along the way, and all the way up to chapter 12, and of hypocrisy and against worldly materialism, and we see against worry, It's a sin for a Christian to worry, even in these times right now with this virus going around the world. It's not for us to worry. People say to me, Pete, how come you're as calm as a cucumber? How come you ain't worried about this or bothered by it? I say, I'm ready. I'm ready to go meet the Lord. If He wants to call me right now, He'll call me. But otherwise, I'm not worried about it at all. I'll go when He calls me. I would like to stay here and do a few more years of excerpts. I'm 78 now, and I'm healthy as the man can possibly be. Oh, yes, I have some ailments. I have had some vein problems in my legs. Evidently, somewhere, I have chipped a bone or something in my right leg, and I'm suffering excruciating, almost unbearable pain. But that's human. And the human part is human. And the spiritual part is spiritual. And you can hurt humanly and be just as spiritual, hurting humanly. And so you need to know that. Against love, there is no warning against love. That is the most best thing out there for us. I can tell you this. God did not appreciate unfaithfulness. He does not appreciate unpreparedness. He does not appreciate division among brothers. He does not appreciate questioning what He tells you to do, or where He tells you to go, or what He tells you to say. God is all about justice. And part of His justice for us is just as if we never sinned. When we ask Him to forgive us of our sin, it's just as if we never sinned. And so, we need to be about that. What are we supposed to do on the Sabbath? I'll bet you $1 to a donut. When this thing passes, that we've got on the world right now, the churches will have people in them. People will be coming back to God. Even though I hear people right now cursing. I hear people right now not believing that this is God speaking to this nation. To every nation. You say it started in China. God's speaking to China. You say it's in Japan. God's speaking to Japan. You say it's in Germany. God's speaking to Germany. You say it's in Russia. God's speaking to Russia. You say it's in the United States. I say God is double speaking to the United States. We are the people that put in God we trust when we landed on these shores. My mother's family, the Winslows, landed in 1627 on the shores of this country. And the Winslows were people of authority. They were people who could be used. And my family fall on the side of the Winslows. Now on my father's side, my father was adopted when he was a baby. He was born a Brown. But he was taken the name of Hutchins by adoption. So I really am a Brown. I have relatives that I knew when I was a kid, but I didn't know they were my relatives. Actually, one of my relatives married my wife's sister. And I didn't even know he was my relative. But I found out later. And so after my daddy went on to heaven, I found out some things that I didn't know. My mother filled me in on some things that I didn't know. And I wondered through my life why my daddy always visited those Browns. And why his father's name was Brown that lived up on the hill above us. And I didn't know that. I didn't know that was his father until my mother told me later that we lived just 3 blocks from his father. And Daddy never divulged that to us. He was my real grandfather. And I never knew him. And so We don't know everything, but God does. And someday we may know some things. I don't know if they'll be important or not when we get to heaven. Teaching them about humility. Jesus is teaching us about humility. He's telling them about the heavenly banquet in 14:15 through 24. Let's go to Luke chapter 14 and look at 15 through 24 right here. Chapter 14, 15 through 24. Wouldn't you know the last two pages are stuck together? And here, 14, 15 through 24. Here we go. Wow. And when one of them that sat at meat with him heard these things, he said unto him, Blessed is he that shall eat bread in the kingdom of God. Then said he unto him, Made a great supper, and buried many, and sent his servant out at the supper time to say to them that were bidden, Come, for all things are now ready. And they all, with one consent, began to make excuse. The first said to him, I have bought a piece of ground. I must needs go and see it. I pray thee, and I be excused. Can you imagine a man buying a piece of ground he never saw? Man, he had holes in his bag. He didn't have an excuse. And then there's another man, 19. And another said, I have bought 5 yoke of oxen, and I must go and prove them. I pray thee, excuse me. What a flimsy. Would you go buy 5 yoke of oxen that you hadn't tried? Would you go buy 5 yoke of oxen? You hadn't seen them plow? You hadn't seen them be obedient? No. These are flimsy excuses. And you aren't going to have one either. If you die and go to hell, you are not going to have an excuse when Jesus said, Why did you die and go to hell? You're not going to have an excuse. You've heard the truth. And another said, I have married a wife, therefore I cannot come. So what did that last one do? He put the physical things of this earth ahead of God and said, I can't take time out right now to go to church or come worship you because I married a wife and I got more to do right now to entertain her and myself. And so I'm not going to come to church. So they didn't. So here's 3 people that missed the way. So how about you today? Have you got all kinds of excuses why you haven't been in church? Why you haven't been with God's people? Are you like the parable of the lost? The lost. The stories of the lost. Are you going to be one of those in that parable that you refused? And because you refused, you won't be there? He will say, Depart from me, you wicked, into eternity of hell and destruction, into utter darkness, where the fire is not quenched. Wow. 2 men on the earth. Luke 16. Luke 16 said this. There were 2 people. One was a rich man, one was a beggar. And the rich man came out of his house, and the beggar was set out there at his gate. And the rich man threw the crumbs off his table to the birds and laughed at the beggar and said, The birds are going to eat your food. And went on to work. And the day came when they died. The rich man died, and in hell he lifted up his eyes. And he seeth Abraham, who had died, in God's bosom. And he said, and cried unto Abraham, Hey, Father Abraham. Now he's calling him Father Abraham. And before he cursed him and kicked him, and the dogs came and licked his sores, and he was a poor beggar. And now he's calling him Father Abraham. And Abraham said to him, Listen, son, in thy lifetime you had all the good things. Likewise I had all the evil things. Now I am comforted and thou art tormented. And I can't do anything for you. You shall be there forever. And that's the end of that story. And the rich man's still there, still begging to Abraham to dip a drop of water and get it on and drop it on his tongue. One drop of water. And he can't get it. Wow. Well, we've been 20 minutes, about 10 minutes over what I was going to be. So I will see you next time. And appreciate you coming on and watching PH Tidbits. It's a gift from God, I'll tell you right now. Bye-bye.